Okay, Eva, so I'm so happy that we have this opportunity to meet and to talk, and especially for our Spanish speaking audience who is eager to hear more about Adler Drycourse theory and application, especially to education and parenting.
Okay. If you can speak a little louder,
I
I
will,
can hear
yes.
you.
Can you hear me now? It's okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm happy. Yes. Okay, so let's start. Do you want to introduce yourself or to say something about Draco's work?
Yes, I would like people in Spanish speaking countries to know Drykers's work. What he has to offer is wonderful for people all over the world. And he made so many contributions to families, to children, to all kinds of people, for all kinds of problems. And the basic principles really work for everybody. I hope the readers will read a Spanish book and a Portuguese book called Children the Challenge for basic principles. It gives a good background of the principles. And there are other books. If people can help with getting them published in Spanish or Portuguese, they should write to me. And I can be in touch with the publisher to make a contract for a Spanish edition of Dryker's books. I would like that. Later, you can give them my email address and they can be in touch with me. Okay?
Perfect, I will. Is there a special book do you wish for them to read in Spanish of all the huge work of Drycourse?
There are some books, but not enough. And they're not easy to buy. The bookstores don't seem to have them. But Children the Challenge was published in Spanish, and I think hard to get. So if people know publishers that they want to contact me, they should. I have all the copyrights to Dryker's books. And if we want a Spanish publication, I need to be in touch with the publisher to make a contract.
That will be great. Thank you. Yes, there is a growing interest and need for more.
Many people want to learn about Adlerian psychology, and they learn it the way Dryker's wrote it. It's simple to follow. And my Adlerian theory book could also be published in Spanish. It's published in other languages, but not in Spanish. So if they want to have my book in Spanish, I need the name of a publisher who wants to do that. Okay?
Okay, perfect. Eva, can you tell me how come Drakers made such a huge impact in education? He took Adlerian principles and really create a systematic way of parenting and educating children, which is so remarkable.
It is remarkable. And he had help. In Israel, Yotam was very active, trying to spread the word. And in Germany, Eric Blumenthal. So many people around the world wanted to be leaders to teach what Dryker's was teaching. And that helped. Okay?
Yes, I think that especially here in Israel, we have a huge debt to Drycourse, who trained the first Adlerians who created
Yes.
the Adler Institute.
Yes, and Achi was very brave, and he did a lot to help that. And his courage was remarkable because so many people were trying to fight him. They didn't want to accept Achi's ideas, which were Dryikers. And Dryikers was in Israel trying to get his ideas across, and many people accepted it. And then they taught it in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And this Adlerian Summer School, which is called the Rudolf Dreikers Summer School of Ikasi, we teach that, and people from all over the world come to the summer school, and they learn Adlerian psychology the way Dreikers taught it.
Mm-hmm. What is especially significant the way Dryikers taught it? What is the Drykursian way of understanding or teaching Adler?
Well, he was very sure that people needed to understand that behavior is goal-directed, and that was a basic principle of Adler. And these goals that we have, we don't always know in our own heads that they are the goals we have. Some people have a goal. I want to be the prettiest person around. I want people to admire me all the time. And they don't know they have that goal. But their behavior is like that. And other people have a goal of nobody has to get close to me because I don't want them to know me. Mm-hmm. And their behavior is in line with that. So many different personal goals that people have, and that guides their behavior. And when they come to an Adlerian counselor or therapist, they learn about that. Mm-hmm. And they can change their goal. Mm-hmm. With help. They can change the kind of person they want to be and how they want to influence other people. Okay? Mm-hmm. And you know from your own experience that it works.
Yes, I do. And Eva, you say that there was a huge difficulty for accepting Adlerian ideas as Dryikor taught them. What do you think is the main resistance to accept Adlerian way of education in our countries which use so much authoritarian or punitive ways of raising kids?
It's because Dryikers and Adler wanted to build a world based on equality, and it was called social equality. It meant we have to respect each other as equals and work together with that mutual respect. And a lot of people don't want to have a world based on mutual respect. They want a world in which some people dominate and other people have to follow orders. And if they want a world like that, they don't like Dryikers and Adler, because Dryikers and Adler said for mental health, that's not a good way to live. It makes for a bad way to live when you have superior and inferior people and people striving to be superior. So they offered a system of how to be a human being fully without striving to be superior, just accepting each other as mutual equals and valuing each other. And many people don't like that. They don't want a world based on mutual equality and mutual respect.
That means that the people that reject the idea, they are in power, they are afraid of giving up power? Their power?
They want their power. They want to dominate, and they want to be superior. And if they're feeling in fear, they may still want to be superior. So they don't like the idea of equality. And that has to change if you want a world in which people are kind to each other and respectful of each other. And not everybody wants a world like that. Some people want a world in which they are the dominant people and everybody has to follow orders that they want. It's not necessary and it's not good for society, and it's not good for mental health. But a lot of people think that's the only way to live. So they reject Adler and Dryckers. And once they recognize that it's a bad way to live, and that what Adler and Dryckers were talking about is a better way to live, then they follow what Adler and Dryckers wrote in other ways. Okay?
How they can find out that this is a better way to live? What will be the incentive for them to accept, consider those ideas which are so natural for us, but not for them yet?
When they have a counselor who treats them with mutual respect, that counselor will show them it's a better way. They will experience it. They will see it's better. And when they're raising their children, they will see that the children will be much happier and more cooperative. And parents who were skeptical and tried what Adler and Dryckers wrote about, they soon become eager to follow the ideas of Adler and Dryckers because their children, their marriage is so much better. And they recognize that it really works. So that's how they become persuaded. Okay?
Yes. So actually, the Adler-Dryckers theory entered in many countries through education, through parenting, because they
Yes, it did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because the children are much more cooperative, much more responsible, much more concerned about others, and much happier.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps.
Sure. What is your advice for us, for activists of the Adlerian psychology in many, many countries? We are sometimes the first group, and few people that are starting this movement. It's a democratic movement.
Well, they should start with their own family, and they should start with their own school and their own marriage. And when they do, they find that everybody is much happier and more productive, and everybody feels more accepted and more valued. And then they work together much better. Mm-hmm. They can make teams of people solving problems, and it's easier to solve problems together when you have cooperation. So for many people, it doesn't take long before they accept the principles. They see how well it works. Mm-hmm. Okay?
So your advice is to join together and to work together to expand the ideas, to better the society in general, and try to avoid the competition that sometimes it creates even in the Adlerian.
Yes, and cooperation rather than conflict. Unfortunately, many people don't know how to have cooperation, but if they read the book and follow the principles, they will learn how to have cooperation.
Yes. I read and reread the Dryker's work, and I am amazed how actual his ideas are today. His tools, everything we apply, we can see immediately the effect on children and communities.
Yes, I had a student once in my class, and we were teaching Adlerian psychology, and she said her husband is always dominating the children and being an autocrat, and he has a lot of trouble with the children, and she's trying to help him be more democratic and follow Adlerian principles. Well, the problem is that she was trying to dominate her husband in order to have him behave the way she thought he should. And I helped her see that was not a good idea, that she needed to help him see that he was bringing on problems himself by his own behavior, and he didn't need to have her criticize him. If he just followed her example and saw the way she talked to the children, he could do the same thing. And she hadn't realized how she was trying to boss him around, why he was rebelling. And once she understood that, everything changed in their family. He was less rebellious himself to her domination, and he was much kinder to the children, and things were much easier at home after she realized how she was making the same mistake that he was making. So you have to have help. You can't always see your own behavior. And if you get help from an Adlerian counselor, you can see how you can make your own mistakes and improve them. And she could improve her own mistakes. And her husband, by looking at her behavior and how effective it was, he learned just by observation. And that was really a good way to change the family. And the children became much happier in her home. And her husband became much happier. And then she became happier. So you can see all these things by following these principles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
See, yeah. Sometimes we are not aware that we are applying the same authoritarian methods to our equals instead of winning their cooperation.
We don't see our own behavior. We don't recognize it. We don't recognize how we try to dominate others. And we have to be very careful with that by looking at our own behavior. And that's hard to do. Many of us don't like seeing our own behavior. We only want to see other people's behavior. But we have to look at our own behavior in order to see if we're setting a good example or not. And if we don't set a good example, we might consider changing our own behavior. With my own children, I sometimes wonder, how did they behave this way? How come? And then I would look at my own behavior and I would see I act that way too. And sometimes that was a shock to me. Even small things, the children imitate. So you have to just look what influence you have on others. And if they behave in a strange way, you might ask yourself, am I acting that way too?
Mm-hmm. Very good question.
Okay.
Many times people get, when they encounter the Adlerian and Drykor's theory of parent education, they understand very quickly the kindness, and then they don't quite understand the firmness behind that, the idea of setting limits and boundaries that are consistent with the demands of the situation and social interest, and then they fall into kind of laissez-faire or a permissive way of education or pampering. it is like there is much more, if we go from power to acceptance and supporting children, something is missing with the kindness and firmness together.
Yes, that's very true. They go from dominating to giving in, and that's an unfortunate process. We don't want to give in because it's not respectful to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And in the Adler-Dreiker system, we have to be respectful of ourselves as well. We can't let the children dominate. That doesn't help because that also brings domination. We have to have equality and democracy. And that means the children need to learn equality and democracy in how they treat others. And we have to set a good example for that. Not to give in, because giving in only means somebody else is the boss. And we don't want that. We want people who have self-respect and respect others. And we have to set the example for that. Mm-hmm. Does that help?
Yes, very much. I think that you are remind us how interconnected are our behavior and others, and we need to set the boundaries out of respect and respect for ourselves, for the children, and for the demands of the situation.
Yes, if we don't respect ourselves, it's very hard for them to respect us. So we need to show that we do have self-respect and we set limits for others, not because we want to dominate, but we want to have equality and mutual respect. And setting limits helps establish mutual respect. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay. One issue that is very common now is that you heard about the helicopter parents that it's like an helicopter above the children, and they don't have any autonomic time when they can experiment and try things without some adults looking at them and watching and directing or advising all the time. It's like kids don't have that time by themselves.
Yes, I think many modern parents, what's called helicopter parents, mm-hmm. are looking over the shoulder of the children all the time. And the children cannot learn from their own mistakes, but the children need to learn from their own mistakes. And the helicopter parent doesn't allow that to happen. So we have to be careful and let the children learn from their mistakes. When one of my children, who was the youngest, had 3 older siblings dominating her, she developed a very clever scheme for self-defense, and she was the only one who did it. She would bite them, and they would complain, and I would say, why does she? Maybe it's her way of defending herself. If you treated her nicely, maybe she wouldn't bite you. And that was all I had to say. And I was amazed that she discovered such an effective way of manipulating her older siblings so they wouldn't boss her around so much. I thought that was very clever. I would have never told her to do that, but she discovered it by herself, and it worked very well. You understand what I mean?
Yes. I think that today parents hearing that, they can be very afraid or upset that not intervening and saving and create a solution, but let them to find their way.
Let them find their own solutions. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And often their own solutions are very clever. I thought that was a clever solution for the youngest to develop. None of the others ever did that. They never felt they had to. And I was, in a way, glad that she figured it out. There wasn't much she could do because they were bigger, but she could bite. So I think people find their solutions and they find what works.
What was the most, the thing that let in yourself an impression from Drycourse as a father, being a child? What do you remember about his methods of education?
Well, he was so encouraging. That was the part that was the best. He was always encouraging. If I felt I couldn't handle something, he would always encourage me and say, yes, you can deal with this. And I remember one time I had surgery on my neck, and he was there during the total surgery to encourage me to be willing to put up with all the troubles I was going through. And it was really wonderful to have an encouraging parent who made me believe in my own strength. And I needed that so many times. I needed to believe in my own strength. And many times I did not. But he was there not to take the pain away, but to encourage me to be able to handle whatever problems I had. And I think that's the best thing a parent can do, is give the child a feeling of strength, that you can cope with whatever happens. And now, in my older age, I rely on that a lot, because sometimes I have a lot of aches and pains, and I need to be able to handle it. And his encouragement in childhood was such a help, even now that he's gone. And he knew the principle of encouragement, how important that was. Help us feel that we can cope no matter how difficult things are.
Yes. Oh, it's so amazing. I think that there are two things, as you say. He didn't took the pain away. He knew it's part of your challenge of your life, but he was there to encourage you to know deeply that you can handle it and overcome.
Yes, and people need to have that feeling of encouragement so that when things are tough and difficult, that they know they can deal with it. They can cope. And they have to believe that. And Adlerian principles teach us how to encourage ourselves so that we know we can cope even when it's difficult. And all human beings have difficulties at some point and at some time in their life, and they need to have courage to deal with it.
How we can encourage ourselves, or especially for those of us who didn't were encouraged in our childhood, how we can make up for that.
Yes, we have to be able to encourage ourselves and to encourage others. We need to help them to feel they can cope with whatever happens. And we need to feel it ourselves. It's important that we each believe we can cope ourselves. And then we set an example for others, because they watch us and they see it's possible. And I know many people in older age need a lot of encouragement in order to feel they can cope, not to give in, not to fight, just to cope with whatever goes on. And they have to communicate self-respect. In order for other people to respect us, we need to show them we respect ourselves. And that makes a big difference. And if parents show they respect themselves, the children will learn to respect them too. And that's important.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so difficult to balance.
Very difficult. Life is not always easy. And once we accept that, we are okay. We're better off. If we expect life to be easy, we have a wrong impression. We're not prepared to cope with difficulties. And COVID showed us how difficult that is. COVID put pressure on people they never expected to have. But we can learn to live with it because we know we have to. And we know everybody is suffering. So we have to be respectful of them and of ourselves.
Yes. Wow, this is a great message and so needed now for all of us.
Thank you for talking with me. I hope it helps the people in Spanish-speaking countries and others around the world.
I am sure it will. I want to thank you so much, Eva, for being here and being with us and spreading that deep wisdom in your special way of explaining exactly, deeply and simple to understand, and it's very encouraging for all of us.